Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Hey, everybody, it's me, Todd Novak. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs podcast. We are thrilled to death that you are listening to our show. We are minus the great and wonderful Jared Brandon as he is driving up this way in a rainstorm in a truck. There's not a rainstorm in the truck. He's in a truck, and the rainstorm is outside, just to be clear. Tony, what do we do on the show?
We like to talk about gear, and that's things like guitars and amps and pedals and accessories, all the good stuff. But more importantly, we normally like to talk to the makers of this gear.
Indeed.
But on occasions such as today, we talk to the movers and the shakers.
The enthusiasts.
Enthusiasts.
Yes, and the teachers and sharers. Special guest, who are you?
My name is Brett Kingman, and I'm saying a big hello from Melbourne, Australia. A very cold Melbourne, Australia.
Fantastic. I got to say, one comment that we usually get on the show behind the scenes is whenever we have somebody that jumps on and says, "Oh, it's so weird to hear you talk to me over the as we're doing this right now because I'm so used to listening to you." The same can be said for you, Mr. Kingman. It is very strange hearing you.
Which bit about it is strange?
Well, I just all I can imagine you is on your stool with your headset and a guitar, and I'm imagining that right now.
Well, let me put you exactly in the picture. I'm sitting on a piano stool, which I've decided is the best thing for my back after years and years of doing this. I tried studio stools and chairs and things that cost a lot of money, even those big blow-up balls, and I've suffered lower back problems from all of the time.
Oh, man.
Sitting in front of this computer. And in the end, I thought, I'll go and get the piano stool. And it is it's a godsend because it forces you to sit upright with your feet flat on the floor.
Yeah.
And that, of course, strengthens your core. For anybody else who may be suffering lower spinal issues,
yeah,
go and get a $50 piano stool. And yes, I'm sitting here with a Music Man Axis on my lap and a pair of headphones wrapped around my big fat scone, and I'm having a friendly chat to you guys, and it's great. It's really good already.
What flavor is your scone?
Aussie.
Yeah. Well, if this is anything indicative of the show, I think we're all in for a treat. Those of you who are not familiar, if there are any out there who are not familiar with Mr. Kingman, where can they go see what you can do?
Gosh, well, you can go to my YouTube channel, which has been up since almost last century. No, that's not true. 2008, I think we started that one. Just put Brett Kingman into the YouTube search engine, and there I will be. I think there's only one other Brett Kingman in the world, and he's a real estate agent in Nashville. Not very happy with
the fact
me.
that you know that.
Because he made a point of telling me a few years ago, I think he's been bombarded with guitar-related questions, and he's not a guitar player.
What fuzz should I buy, Mr. Kingman?
That's right. Well, we have this quarter-acre block around the corner.
Right. Oh, dear.
Sorry, I completely lost track of the question or the.
Well, you're on Instagram under Brett Kingman, so they can. That's easy.
Yeah, that's true.
Find.
I'm on Instagram too, and until recently, I was on Facebook, and that had a reasonable following. But I was hacked about 3 weeks ago, and they have not reinstated my account, despite reporting it from myself and well, I'm told other people as well.
Oh man,
which is a little annoying, considering that both Facebook and Instagram are now under the Meta annex.
Yeah.
But the left arm is not talking to the right arm. You've probably heard this story before, but
yes.
So Facebook is in the bad books with me, and apparently I'm in the bad books with them too at the moment.
Well, they're probably listening, so you've sealed your fate now.
Do you think? I'm not sure that they would. Kingman is not aligned with Kardashian kind of,
true
popularity.
So. Yes. Well, I hope you get it all back. That should that'll be good. All right, listen, everybody. We have lots and lots to discuss on the show tonight, and we just have a couple of announcements real quick. I need to say a big fat thank you to
Road of Australia.
Rode for supplying our fantastic audio equipment. We are eternally grateful for their support and generosity, and for just making damn good stuff. Just
Do you know,
up.
I'm going to interrupt you here because
Yeah.
I'm actually talking into a Rode microphone.
Well, which one?
It's the, I had to look behind me. It's the Pod mic.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Those are great ones.
Absolutely,
And I
fantastic.
paid for this one. They did not supply it. But I can attest to its greatness.
Yeah.
My wife, who has a gardening podcast, which is quite popular in the US, actually, uses this. I bought them for her. So, sorry. Carry
No,
on.
that's quite all right.
Well, that's excellent. That's even better.
I bet it's seen a lot of growth recently. Hey. Oh, I hit the wrong one. There you go. Oh, that was terrible. Anyways,
I'm green
that's
with
awful.
envy.
That's awful. Nope, I'm going to not acknowledge that. All right. Hey, listen. Well, I also wanted to share this thing here. We get lots of really fantastic mail from everybody. I call it mail, notes, DMs, whatever it is, right? Messages.
Letters.
And this one is
Correspondence.
Correspondence, yes.
Yes.
We got a correspondence from our friend Mike D. He says, and this is like one of those ones where you read it and then you share it with anybody that'll listen. He said, "Hi Todd, I hope all is well on your end."
What about Tony?
Well, he's talking to me.
Oh.
He's assuming I'm going to share it with you. This email is a month late, but I thought it was worthwhile to send. That interview you did with Rich Land was beyond excellent. And one of the best Guitar Knobs moments ever, in my opinion, was that bit of reflection you did near the end, starting around 1:08, an hour and 8 minutes. I was like, okay, trying to remember what I said.
Oh, I can remember that like it was yesterday.
When I heard that section, I was in the middle of a jog, but needed to stop and re-listen. It was something that I think the gear community needed and meant a lot to me and other listeners I've spoken to. It was a humble reminder that even if we can't afford the gear we want, we can still find joy and fulfillment through the gear community. Here's a paraphrase of what got me. Quote, "Just share, just be passionate, talk to other people, and be hungry about those things. That is what will help fill you up. You're probably going to run into a lot of things that you didn't consider before or think of if you get past the idea that all of this out there is not yours and it's unattainable. Just thought I'd reach out and let you know that definitely didn't go unnoticed. Best, Mikey D."
Ah.
That was, that meant a lot to hear because, we do earnestly care about this stuff.
Is that something you said?
Yeah, apparently.
Wow.
Which I really, really appreciate that. And that was from episode number 264 with the Instagram guru interview. That was the interview with Tethered to the Pole Star. Mm-hmm. The gentleman with the big gray beard on our. You look for that on wherever you get your stuff. 264.
All your podcasts.
Yeah, all the stuff. Anyways, I really appreciate that. We love hearing from you guys, so please continue to send that kind of stuff. Thank you so much, Mikey D, for sending that. Let's get on with what's going on in our music worlds this week. Tanya Bolonsky is going to hit us first, and then we're going to hear from Mr. Kingman.
Okay, Todd, in my music world this week, I finished watching the FX miniseries Pistol.
Okay.
Which is their 6-part series on the Sex Pistols.
Oh, yeah.
I actually liked it better than Sid and Nancy and Filth and the Fury. As with the movies, this one it stretches the facts a little bit. But I thought it was really well done, and the actors that play Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious do a tremendous job. This series was based on Steve Jones, a.k.a. Jonesy's book. I think it was Lonely Boy, and it was his viewpoint of how the Sex Pistols were formed and what happened and who was in charge and this, that, and the other. So I've done a little deep diving after watching the series, and apparently John Lydon, a.k.a. Johnny Rotten, was not thrilled that he wasn't given a chance to review the script. So there was a series of lawsuits back and forth before this thing was, probably before it was even filmed. So there is always some controversy with that gang of characters, but all in all, if folks out there are not familiar with the Pistols, well, there's people that probably aren't or may not,
right.
Or they've heard the name, but despite having minimal talent, let's just say,
and contribution.
And I mean, they put out what is many consider one of the best albums of the 20th century.
That's true.
And it's, I mean, I after the series, I went back and re-listened to Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols.
Sure.
And it really is. It's a remarkable album.
It holds up.
And it's well produced. I mean, given the fact of what they were dealing with, and they were dropped by EMI, they were dropped by A&M, and finally Virgin picked them up. It's a pretty amazing story. One of the things that I wasn't aware of, and I'm actually starting to read her book, was Chrissie Hynde's.
Oh, yeah. She was all up in that stuff really early.
She was in London and worked at Malcolm McLaren's shop Sex.
Are you going to do the whole movie right now?
Would you like me to?
No.
Okay. But anyhow, I didn't realize what an integral... I mean, she definitely knew those guys. Now, this miniseries kind of, I think, paints her maybe a little more important than she was in the contribution and everything to the Pistols. But all in all, I mean, it's definitely worth watching. It'll, 6 episodes. I think they're 40 minutes apiece. It's a fun one to watch over the weekend. So that's my suggestion.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Brett Kingman. What's going on in your music world this week?
Well, I can actually add to that conversation because the Sex Pistols. I'll tell you what's going on in my musical world this week, but I've been watching that series too. In fact, I watched episode 3 last night, and the Sex Pistols are probably the greatest rock and roll band I've ever seen live, and I've seen a lot of bands live. And they absolutely, or Steve Jones' style, absolutely informed my right arm style back in '77.
Yeah.
A 14-year-old boy who could already play but was looking for a kind of mission. So the Pistols mean a lot to me, and having seen them live with Glenn Matlock, it was crazy.
So did you see them? I'm sorry, did you see them in the 70s or in the reunion tours?
No, I saw one of the reunion shows in, I think it must have been the mid-90s. Yeah, mid-90s.
Yeah, 95, 96, yeah. I saw them up in Cleveland, and that was I wished that I could have been back in that, back in 76 or 77.
Yeah.
But, well, we all wish.
Too cool.
Yeah. So, the Pistols. And the series is fun, I think. And they're probably, John Lydner's probably correct in saying that they've had taken a little bit of artistic license with scripts and facts and, all that sort of stuff. But I think the message is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Which is just, go for it.
So your musical week?
In my musical world,
I
have just finished a 5-month run with a big national tour here called the Red Hot Summer Tour, which features 8 bands, none of which you would probably know, but they're quite big here, and we've been playing to, 20,000 people every weekend. And,
wow, that's incredible.
So that's been kind of fun. I'm sitting here in front of perhaps 15 pedals that are queued up ready to be demonstrated. One of them, which I'll mention in the 4-pedal bit that you include, the 4 on the floor, later on. I just finished Sean Tubbs' Tilt Overdrive, which went to YouTube and Instagram yesterday, I think, the day before perhaps, and a couple of excellent pedals by John at the Very Good Amp Company, one being the Slap Echo and the Fuzz. Those videos went up last night as well. So it never stops here. I'm very fortunate to be, because I'm an aging guitar player and an aging YouTuber and an aging person. But the work is forever increasing. It's like the Hubble constant. So it's just my pedal universe is constantly expanding.
That's awesome.
So no complaints, and very, very grateful to, my small legion of followers who still follow.
That's amazing. That's good. That's all good stuff to hear, man.
Yeah.
So, Tony.
And the honor of talking to you two.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, that's got to be the highlight of your year,
That's
I'm
the
sure.
absolute highlight of the week.
For sure. I mean, it's like,
Thus far.
yeah, I mean, on the same level as Nebworth, I'm sure.
Well, I haven't played Nebworth.
Oh, jeez.
I doubt it could meet the lofty heights of guitar.
So let's see. This
How
week,
about you, Todd?
Well, I've taken an extra amount of time this week so I got a show coming up, not on the level that Mr. Kingman just talked about, but we've got a series of shows coming up, and I just got a new, well, I don't know how new it is because it was sitting out in the ocean for a year, but it's a Pure Salem Bruiser, which is the Flying V model. And,
yep.
And I've been waiting for that thing for the longest time, and I got it, and I played it for about 10 minutes and then did a show with it, which might not have been the smartest thing I've done just because...
And that's bravery.
I've never owned a V before,
Yeah.
a full size V, and I started off on a really early JB player, kind of like Randy Roan's offset thing for like a blip. But I'm now experiencing what everybody goes, oh right, the V.
And what scale length is the V?
I think that one is standard Gibson scale, 24 3/4.
Okay.
Or 7/8.
Thanks, Tony. He's my numbers man.
Well, it's a question worth asking, I think, because the scale length, can mean a lot to different people.
Oh, for sure. It's I think the trickiest thing, and this is probably where a lot of people, from what I've heard, it's I guess akin to playing like a Steinberger or something, where there's no meat there, where you're playing the area there, all the meat's in the back and the cool part. So I'm used to having like some sort of foundation to rest on, and there isn't one per se. So that part has been very tricky to play.
I'll bet.
But
because some serious weight displacement. And is it balanced? Is there neck dive or anything?
No, it's actually very well balanced. It sits
good.
really nicely. And it's not it doesn't bottom dive either, to where if the neck was too light.
No, Pure Salem did a really good job on this one. I mean, I was really impressed. I mean, the fit finish, balance, weight, it's really quite a nice instrument.
Yeah. I'm going to do a little video on what I've done to it in a little bit on Instagram, but swapped out the pickups and did a couple of other things, but I love it. And it's so much fun to play because it's like, I got a Flying V, woo!
Yeah, that's cool. I've never played a V.
With a gold sparkle pickguard.
With a gold sparkle pickguard because I do all my guitars in black with a gold sparkle pickguard, Brett. So.
Oh yeah, well that makes them sound better.
It does. It makes me feel better, anyways.
It detracts from his playing.
Yeah.
It makes me happy. To my left, I've got a very orange, sparkly Charvel San Dimas wildcard. And every time I look at it, it just makes me smile because that's what sparkles do.
Right?
Yep.
They're fantastic.
Sparkles equal smiles.
That's right. So this one has got a really big pickguard on it. It's a fairly large one, almost the full size of the guitar.
No.
The full size of the body, yeah.
No, it's
does.
It's a lower half V. It's like a 50s style. Yeah. Not like a 70s style.
Educate me for a moment. Pure Salem is an American company?
Yes. Well, it's Pure Salem he's in Florida, and he designs the guitars, and then they're made overseas.
Okay.
And that's why it was locked up for. I mean, it took like a year and a half to get the guitar. So, but it was worth it. I love it. It's fantastic.
Good.
So
I'll have a look for it on Instagram.
Yeah. I got a couple of pictures up there, but I'll be posting some more again about all the cool things that we've done to it so far. Okay. Anyhow, speaking of cool things, we need to talk just briefly right before we get into our four on the floor with Mr. Brett Kingman, superstar. Superstar.
Yeah, he's not here today.
So, we are good friends of the show, Tour Gear.
Tour Gear Designs.
They sponsor the four on the floor.
Yes.
And you know what, Tony? You know what else Tour Gear patch cables are good for? You're right.
Back
Giving
scratchers?
gifts. Oh, we said it wrong at the same time. Giving gifts. Yes, that's right. Because I gifted a whole bunch of them to a friend of mine, and I was like, "What could I get?" Oh, I know exactly what to get.
Gear Design.
That's right. He just got his a nice new pedal board for his birthday, and so these came in, and I was like, "This is what this guy needs."
Nice, boy! What a nice thing. I'm my birthday's coming up in January, Todd.
Indeed. So, hey, if you're looking for some really fantastic patch cables that have an extremely low profile and don't gob up the back of your pedal or the sides of your pedal with overly huge pancake holders, whatever, jacks. Yeah, not pancake holders,
You
jacks.
are a wordsmith.
I'm a wordsmith.
Hey, but
Anyways.
wait, Todd, you didn't pay full price for those.
I didn't, because I used the Guitar Knobs code when I paid for it, and I saved 10% on it.
10% on
That is
already
correct.
a very low-priced item.
Yes, so just
You're gonna
punch
love
in
'em.
the Guitar Knobs when you go to buy these fabulous cables, and you will be happy.
One word, all lowercase.
Correct. Tour Gear Designs. Thank you so much for sponsoring our four on the floor.
Nothing says I love you quite like a patch cable.
Exactly. I think that they have that on a shirt somewhere.
That would be, that if they don't, they should.
Yes.
The gift of the patch cable. I like it.
Tony?
Let me get a little bit of this.
1, 2, 3. Four on the floor. All right.
Pedal.
Brett Kingman, guitar
Sir.
maestro from Melbourne. Enlighten us. What is your four on the floor?
Well, let's begin in 1973. And the backstory to this is that you guys probably know that I've seen a few pedals come through these doors.
A couple.
But my relationship with little tin boxes began at the ripe old age of 10 years old in 1973. I'd already been playing for a year and bought a little 5-watt amp and a $20 Suzuki, I think, guitar with my pocket money. But my very kind mum said that I must have said I'd like a wah-wah because I was listening to glam rock, David Bowie, T-Rex, Slade were coming from the UK side of the globe and infiltrating the 10-year-old's ears. I used to almost strap a transistor radio to my head, even at that age. And anyway, I said, I've got to get a wah-wah, Mum. So she looked in what was called the Trading Post, which is a used kind of magazine, classifieds, and found a $10 wah-wah in a suburb of Melbourne. We lived in an outer suburb of Melbourne. So we got up early one Saturday morning, and she very kindly drove me to this inner suburb of Melbourne to meet and buy this wah-wah pedal, which she had no idea what a wah-wah pedal was, and I'd only heard one. I hadn't actually seen one. But in the end, we were greeted by a young man who said, "Yep, come and have a look at it. And you're young to be buying a wah-wah pedal." And I probably sheepishly said, "Yes, sir," or something idiotic like that. Anyway, we walked past the master bedroom in this grand mansion in inner city Melbourne, and there was her boss sitting up in bed having a cup of tea. So that was embarrassing for her and serendipitous for me because I was then graced with a Shinai Companion Fuzzwah, the first pedal that formed, a long chain of pedal
That's a
relations.
big one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it lasted probably 2 years before it fell to bits because they weren't very tough, especially for a kid who was as enthusiastic as me. I played 6 hours a day, every day. And it was followed by the Roland B bar, which was great for a Zeppelin Sabbath fan at the age of 12. The treble booster on it was actually more useful to me than the fuzz. So number one is the Shinai Companion Fuzzwah.
That's
Fuzz,
it's like
Fuzzwire volume pedal.
sell
Yeah.
that
I've still
to
got
send
one
your
here.
kid to school, to college or university. Sorry.
Wow, and you said you still have one?
I've got 3 of them here.
You send me to university. Jeez.
And I've got the tornado pedal that they did as well. That's fun.
Now,
And,
do you have the Hurricane with the siren?
I've got the Hurricane.
Ah.
Yep. That's what I was thinking of.
Wow.
And I've got a Resley Tone. Do you know the Resley Tone was the first Univibe?
Oh no, okay. I don't know if
And because it's Japanese, they had trouble pronouncing L's. It ended up being stamped and branded Resley Tone.
I love it.
Wow.
That's true.
That is amazing.
Yeah, look it up. And they sound amazing.
Wow.
Probably a little embarrassing to the people who produced it, later on after it was pointed out to them that that's not quite the way you say Leslie, but it had the desired effect, and it was the precursor to the Univibe.
That's incredible.
And it probably kept them out of any kind of lawsuits too.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that they were too fussed about the lawsuits. You've got to remember that in those days, Japan was probably cruelly identified as a lesser manufacturer in the same way that China were when they first began mass manufacturing. And it wasn't until, probably the late 70s when, Sony and Akai and Aiwa and a lot of other prestigious companies, including the car manufacturers, actually stated to the world, well, we're here and we're here to stay and we are top quality. And, of course, they remain so.
Yep.
I remember the first Honda Civic I ever saw back in the 70s.
Teeny tiny.
I mean, little 12-inch wheels, maybe
with
smaller.
With the big rubber back end and around the.
That's crazy. I mean, but they're as the auto industry,
those cars are worth so much money now. Those really early imports, the early Datsuns and stuff. Wow.
Yep.
Anyways, on a different podcast, you can hear all about that.
Japanese cars
how about
we love.
Number 2.
Number 2, okay, will be the Crunchbox by MI Audio, the version 2 Crunchbox. In fact, are you guys familiar with that pedal?
Crunchbox. I'm just looking it up right now.
I am not. So why don't you tell us all the gory details?
MI Audio is Michael Ibrahim, and he's based in Sydney, but the Crunchbox has found quite a strong following globally. Mm-hmm. It's not expensive. It doesn't even look good.
It's like $100.
Yep, but it sounds amazing. And in terms of his sales volumes, his Blues Pro is probably only second to it, and you may have heard of that one. Anyway, the Crunchbox was my first kind of inverted commas boutique pedal because it was made by an independent manufacturer, and it was recommended to me by my sister's boyfriend back in 2008. And it is the sole reason, and I'm still looking at it now, I keep it for sentimental reasons, that I began this insane journey of pedal exploration and social media broadcast. So the Crunchbox still sounds great, and is still, even with all of the fractal audio gear that I own here, and that's another conversation that we could have if you want to, is the pedal that I dial up even in modelling world. And
wow.
It's the reason. And Michael has become a great friend. He produces amazing amplifiers as well. And he's an Orthodox Egyptian priest, so he's got a very mixed bag of
wow
of things to do during the day, shall we say?
If he flies a plane, Bruce Dickinson might have some competition here.
Yeah, he doesn't fly a plane. Last time he came here, he drove, I think. So yeah.
Wow.
MI Audio.
Now you said this is version 2. Is this the one with the 2 toggle switches?
Mine has no toggle switches. It's just got 3 white knobs in a red can with 1 foot switch and a very bad graphic, which he's been meaning to change for the best part of 10 years and still hasn't.
It just says Crunchbox on it, right?
Yeah, the one that you're thinking of is probably version 3 or 4, and I've got one of those sitting up there too. It's got 4 little black trimmer knobs underneath the 2 big ones.
So yeah. you think that the V2 is the one, huh?
Well, it's the one for me. The later models probably have all of the same sounds, but and more. But for
Right.
me, this is a sentimental offering,
Fantastic.
which is followed by pedal number 3. I have to give to the Tube Screamer because
okay.
Which version?
any of them really, they all sound the same. But we'll go for the 808. Let's say the Maxon 808. Because I use it live all the time, either in the fractal world or in the real world as a pedal, to boost the front end of the plexi Marshalls that I like to use predominantly. And it has also informed probably 600 to 700 to 800 of the overdrive pedals that I've reviewed coming through these doors, which has paid the mortgage. So the Tube Screamer, I owe a lot, and I think that many other manufacturers probably do too. But in terms of its tone, it does what it says. Although a lot of people tried to use it as an overdrive when it was first released, dial the gain up and the volume back and see if you can get a tube amp sound out of it. And it's not very good at doing that. It's much better at keeping the gain back, cranking the volume, and maybe adding a little bit of tone and hammering the hell out of the front end of whatever given amplifier you're using at the same time. And that applies to old things like the Fender Vibra Verbs, with the 15-inch speaker that Stevie Ray used to use, or even an AC30, definitely all of the early Marshalls.
Where do you go? I'm sorry. Where do you keep your tone setting on the ones that you're using?
On 808s, virtual or real, it's always the same for me. The volume is somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock. So to the right.
Yeah.
The gain would be between 7 and 8 o'clock.
Okay.
And the tone around 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So 2 extreme settings and 1 subtle setting, and that just tightens up all of the bottom end that the amp is seeing, and gives it a little bit more gain in the kind of 400, 500 hertz mid range.
Yeah, I was going to say low mids. Yeah, that would
area that is important when you're in battle volume on stage, for solos at least. And there are metal players using the same settings with high gain amps like Diesels and 5150s and that sort of stuff for exactly the same purpose.
Wicked,
mate.
Wicked. Let's see. Number 4.
Oh, wow. Number 4. Okay. Number 4, I'm actually going to give to a pedal whose name I cannot mention until tomorrow. But
this won't be live till next week, so.
Well, I'm not even sure I can talk to you about it. But I will say this.
Okay.
It's a delay pedal that is built by Robert Keeley and 2 or 3 of his famous and not so famous friends and engineers. Okay, and I predict that this delay pedal will probably put to rest the obsession that most of the world has with the Strymon timeline. Ooh. Because it is an absolute game changer. And Robert's produced a lot of very good pedals during the course of his illustrious career.
Yeah.
But this one, I have a bit of a thing for delay pedals, and I've got most of the classics here, or I've owned them at some point in time. This is going to freak people out, and mainly because of its sound, more so than its functionality. So I'll have to just call number 4 Keeley's, because he's asked me not to name it. Keeley's latest delay pedal, which by the time of broadcast of this podcast, everybody around the world will well and truly know about, I think.
All right. That's a
maybe
big
he
statement.
can call it Achilles tendon.
Oh, man.
Tendon.
No, that's terrible.
He needs to do that.
No.
Yes.
No.
Robert, if you're out there,
there have been whispers about the collaboration that of Robert and a pretty famous guitar player and some engineers since late last year. So, if you dig deep enough, you'll be able to get a background on it. But
Okay.
Nice.
I still cannot give it a name. I'm sorry.
Can you tell us, is this like a big heavy duty like DSP kind of thing, or?
Well, there's DSP involved, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is truly to go up against something like the Strymon.
Oh, definitely. I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to guess one more thing. Does it have do the initials CB have anything to do with this?
CB. I'm just trying to think who else
Chase
CB could be.
Bliss.
Catlin Bread? No. Chase Bliss? No. Joel's not involved in this one.
Okay.
Joel is much. I love Joel. He's become a friend over the years, but yeah, his stuff is a lot more experimental, shall we say.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. And the only other person I can think of that sort of like at that upper level is Josh from JHS. But
No, not Josh either.
okay. I won't spend the whole show guessing.
I think Josh will love it. No, this is much more focused to a working stage industrial environment.
Okay.
Was it Todd Novak?
Yes, it was me, everyone.
I knew it.
Oh,
I knew
he
it.
gave me away.
Unfortunately, to Robert Keeley's detriment, it wasn't Todd.
Exactly. He stands as one of our absolute favorite guests that we've had on the show. What an absolutely delightful man.
Yep. He's become a family friend too. And so I'm sending you, Robert, a big hello. And see, I upheld your wishes.
We put him through the twister and he wouldn't budge.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's very cool.
Now, the other thing that may shock or not some people is that I hardly ever use pedals on stage and haven't since 2009, although I love them still and they've become the backbone of everything I do, really. But on stage, I use a fractal audio gear because it's easy and convenient.
Well, let's just go right into this, shall we? I mean, you've made your maybe fame to most of the rest of the world doing demo gear.
Yes.
But you are an extremely accomplished player, which anybody who's watching you demo the actual gear can recognize in an instant. I mean, it is one of the, I think, more decisive factors about who you want to find playing gear to test it out. When you can see somebody who really knows their way around a guitar, who really understands the relationship between the triangle of guitar, pedal, and amplifier to the degree that you do, it just makes you want to watch more and more and more of it because you know you're going to learn something, and you know the information that you're going to get is well founded and it's not shilled, and it's not like, man, this is awesome.
I'm very flattered, but I'm going to have to use that line somewhere.
Yeah, please do. So tell us about your musical career.
My musical career, gosh. I think we began that story earlier on in the podcast when I was talking about 1973. The 10-year-old boy, actually the 9-year-old boy the year earlier, wandered into a friend's older brother's bedroom on the way to, playing out the backyard or something. And there was this album blaring in the bedroom, and it was called Slade Alive. And Slade were a big glam band in the UK. I'm not sure whether they did any business in the US, but they were big in the UK and big in Australia. And Slade Alive was one of the great live albums that they recorded in a studio in front of 500 of their crazed fans, and it's heavy. The rhythm guitar is very heavy. I think they probably used high watts back then, and Noddy Holder's voice is out of it's interstellar. And when I heard it, it was epiphanal, and I thought, okay, that's it. That's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I want to make that noise. And so I've used anything, tennis rackets, brooms, to just pretend that I could make the noise until I could actually make the noise. And 6 months later, I was hounded my mum to get me some guitar lessons, which I had from a fairly strict classical teacher. Her name was Jean Yule, and she was older, probably late 60s, 70s. And she advanced me maybe 5 grades in the first 18 months. And then she died. But by the end of, which is unfortunate, but by that time, I could already play by ear. So from maybe 74 onwards, I just taught myself. And I have had no real theory knowledge at all, although I can read a little bit of music, but really it's just making up whatever comes into my head. So that's why I'm not very jazzy, because I don't have modal training and, that sort of stuff. So first gigs probably 2 or 3 years later at school, first professional gigs at the age of, on a national level at least, at the age of maybe 20.
Wow.
And then I've been on the touring circuit with most of the major Australian bands since then. Yeah. And there's quite a few of them. And I've been touring with a fella here called James Rain, who used to front a band called Australian Crawl, big in Brazil and big in Australia and New Zealand, but unfortunately didn't make it to the US, although we have toured the US with Robert Palmer and Tina Turner. I've been working with him since the late 80s, and I'm married to his sister Elizabeth, who has the gardening podcast that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
And
you played your cards well.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well, I have to say. He knew me well before I'd met her, though, and was a little bit skeptical about letting me be, shall we say, close to her. But it worked out great, and everybody's happy, and I'm still working with him, and we're still happily married 20-something years later. So that's good. And when we weren't on the road, I had to find something else to do. So I studied graphic design, Photoshop, Illustrator, all the standard Adobe programs. And then when YouTube appeared in late 2007, 2008, I thought, I might get out some of these little pedals and see if I can make videos with my then MacBook Pro laptop, I think it was, and just make little videos with my daughter Sadie, who was 5 or 6 at the time, and she helped me just for fun. And gosh, we had 50 views, we had 100 views, and then suddenly we had 500 views. I'll make another video. So this went on for 6 months, and then 18 months, and I suddenly amounted 10,000 subscribers or something crazy like that, which was a lot at the time.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I haven't increased that much more, but I don't know. There's probably 80,000 now, something that's still modest, but they're very loyal followers. Anyway, Aaron Miller.
The whole thing's a mystery. It is an absolute mystery.
Yeah. Aaron Miller from Pro Guitar Shop in Portland was a fan. And Andy was doing videos at the time, and Andy's still doing videos for Chicago Music Exchange and Reverb and his own channel. And Andy's been a great friend. And Aaron said, "Can you teach?" And I said, "Well, I can try." And then he decided, because he wanted a teacher, an online teacher for the Pro Guitar Shop channel back in mid 2000s. And would I like to do it? And I was just like, wow, because Pro Guitar Shop, Gearman Dude and Pro Guitar Shop, they were about
That was it.
That was it, man. And so I was now, counted amongst them. It was a very big thing. And
you got snakeskin boots or silly fingers. That was only
well, I was about as far removed culturally from Gearman Dude as you could possibly be.
Yeah.
Andy and he's a far more accomplished player, I think, and a little more sedate. But Aaron had a vision, and he said, "You're coming on to the Pro Guitar Shop team," and I did. So Pro Guitar Shop gave me a great foot in the door until Aaron's unfortunate passing a couple of years later. And after that, I started my own channel. Actually, it was already established. Of course it was. That's how Aaron found me. But, Pro Guitar Shop was a big thing, and Andy was and is a great friend, as is Tom Keithley, who is now Catlin bred. All of the Pro Guitar Shop people were dispersed after Aaron's unfortunate passing, but they've all gone on to do bigger and better things as far as I know. So that's good, and I'm still here too. There you go. There's probably much more I can tell you, but
well, that's a really good background, and I know somebody who's been doing this as long as you have is probably said that story, 100 times, and I certainly don't want to spend all of our time talking about that far in the past, considering how much you're doing right now. But that, I think it's good to hear where people have come from, especially people who are starting out. We've a huge amount of our listeners. We get new ones all the time who are stumbling into the guitar world and maybe, or even been here a long time and just haven't advanced as much or want to learn more. And, you just saying something that I don't know how to do this. I know it's weird, but that's encouraging.
Well, I don't know how to do it. I make it up as I go along. My story really is all about tenacity and perseverance and not giving up. And because the moment you do that, if you've admitted defeat, and you may as well just call it a day. I will never do that. And you've got to learn how to deal with disappointment as well, because there will be much. But tenacity is really, and longevity is the key factors. And I tell that to everybody if I'm ever asked to. It's occasionally I have to do public speaking to schools, motivation talks and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. That's what I tell them. Don't give up. If you have got a dream, you've got to see it through. Carry on, wayward son.
You mentioned you hit disappointment kind of heavy there, like as a point. Can you share? I'm assuming you have a story or two that you can relate there.
Well, it's more of a general feeling. If you think that you've put in a great effort on any particular pedal, and I can't pick out a specific example. I'll probably think of it after we finish, but which will be too late. But you think, oh man, that I thought that demo was amazing and probably deserved 15,000 views, but in reality, only got 700. Or you disappoint yourself on stage because suddenly the big moment for the hero solo has come up and you completely stuff it.
That never happens.
And every musician, I would think, has had at least one or two of those occasions. But you've got to pick it up and you've got to carry on. Trolls on the internet, are a constant as well. People like to make personal attacks. Envy is a terrible thing, and it often manifests itself in people trolling you or picking out some sort of personal affliction, which mine is old age. And so you get grandpa a lot, but that's fine because I am old enough to be a grandpa, even though I'm not yet. Those sorts of things, you can't be affected by attacks or disappointing self-performances and those sorts. You've got to pick it up and you've got to get back on the horse and rock on. That's all.
Now, right before the show, we asked a few people. I sent it out. When I say asked a few people, I sent it out to everybody. So that means I asked a few people.
We only have 3 or 4 listeners, so they all responded.
But I did get a couple of questions, and I'm going to pepper them in as we're talking. Does that sound good?
Sure. I'm surprised anybody would want to ask me questions, but
all right, here we go. The first one, you got to start with this one. This is from David Poe. How do you keep a hat on living on the bottom of the planet? All right. Okay, that was
It's hard. I have it strapped to my head. And then the water goes down the different way as well.
That's right. It swirls in the toilet opposite.
Yeah. Incredible. Okay, this is a real one. This is a real one. Question for Brett. What is the hardest guitar solo / song that you do in the James Rain Band?
Motor's Too Fast, it's called. And we recorded that song back in the early 90s, and I had a couple of cracks at recording an appropriate solo for it, which didn't make it to the final cut. The final cut was recorded in London with a fella who happened to be in the studio at the time, and his name is Ian Benson. And Ian Benson was the guitar player for Alan Parsons and Pilot. Also Kate Bush, and he's done work with David Gilmour as well. So if you go and dig up that track, you'll find it on all of the major platforms. Motor's Too Fast, you'll hear a very angular but beautifully melodic solo by Ian Benson. And I've had to learn it because it's a signature solo and it's not easy. And because it's just so odd. But as you will find out if you try it yourself. There you go.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer. I think that was the right answer, but as well.
There's the wrong one?
So let's talk about, I would just love to get your perspective. I always, wonder about there's playing in the bedroom, there's playing with a couple of guys, there's playing in the clubs, there's playing in big theaters, and then you get to what you're out there doing is 20,000 people at a time. Mentally, as a guitar player, do you find that you have to make great adjustments in order to do that? Or is it
no? I find it more as a liberating thing, because when I'm on stage playing in front of big or little crowds, it's usually somebody else's material. So I'm there as a hired gun, predominantly, to do a job and fulfill whatever musical parts I am assigned. And we have 2, often 3 guitar players in that band, so I know what I'm doing. I'm a mechanic pretty much, although I do get space to move in solo spots, which I pretty much make up differently every night, except for signature solos like the aforementioned Motor's Too Fast. In here, in my little YouTube room with all of the pedals and fractal gear and everything else, it's whatever I want to do. So it's a completely clean, creative palette that I can begin with any color, brush and paint at any given time. So when I'm demoing a pedal, I try to honor the pedal and present it in its best possible light, and as far as its features and tones or potential tones go. If I'm getting experimental with fractal stuff, I write a lot of presets for them, and some of those are embedded into their firmware. Then I'll get a little more experimental to try to offer something that people can use as a creative foundation, in their day-to-day creativity. Something different, perhaps with a crazy delay, or I don't know. It could be a number of things, but I don't put blinkers on myself when I'm in this room. This is my space, and whatever I do, whatever I think goes in here. When I'm on stage, that's usually as an employee. I'm there to do a job, and so that's what I do.
Right.
So it makes perfect sense. Can we talk about gear? I know that earlier you said live you're not really using pedals, but what's your rig kind of like?
Well, it's kind of like a big square box.
Does it have Tolex on it?
That is actually called a Fractal Audio FM9. And if it's not the FM9, it's the smaller FM3. Mm-hmm. And if it's neither of those, it's the Axifex 3. I've got a couple of those. They're much bigger rack units, which are a bit of a pain to lug around, but have incredible firepower that I've never actually used all of it. Excuse me. But first and foremost, it's the Fractal Audio FM9, which is a bit like an Axifex 3 in a floor unit. So it has 9 control switches on it, which can be assigned to do anything you wish. That is to change scenes or presets, or use it as a stomp box kind of thing to turn different effects on and off on the fly. And it's got 4 XLR outputs, which go straight to the front of house and monitoring. So on stage in front of me, I have 2 hopefully 12-inch full range wedges fired straight back at me in stereo. If they're 15-inch, that's fine too. I just have to use a high pass filter to tighten them up a little bit, and that's it.
So no amp.
No, well, amp is a funny word, because if the definition is that it amplifies tone. So in many ways, the Fractal gear and the Headrush gear and the Line 6 and all of the other manufacturers who produce modelling stuff. They're amplifying a tone, so they can really be called amplifiers too. They just don't have the physical and tangible appearance of the inverted commas traditional amp, which most people are familiar with. But in terms of what the end result is, particularly from the audience's point of view, it's an amp.
Yeah.
It's not just one amp either. It's 300 amps. That's how many models are in the Fractal firmware, and about at least 4,000 cabinet IRs. So I use probably 3 of those amps and maybe 2 of the cabinet IRs. But it does the job, and it does it so beautifully that our front of house engineer has insisted on all of the other bands that he mixes, using them as well. And I've been using it since 2009. The reason that I started using this stuff is because we were doing big shows, and because I was dragging a pedal board around with me, which was a pretty elaborate pedal board because of thank you YouTube, and I used to use a couple of Fender combos predominantly behind me as the back line. Do you want me to shut up?
No, keep going. Keep going. This is the kind of stuff we love.
But you'd get things like, a preamp valve has gone in the amplifier. So suddenly there'd be, a rush to find a 12A-X7 or something, 12A-T7 or whatever it was, or a power amp valve has gone, or the speaker's blown, or there's a power spike on stage, or any one of, a dozen other factors that could put extreme stress on the player, i.e. me, and the guitar technicians, and, maybe disrupt the schedule of the show, especially if you've only got changeover times of 20 minutes and there's 6 bands on. It's just became, why am I doing this? I'm going to try the very top end of the modelling world, because I was always attracted to technology anyway. So I gave it a shot, and I have never looked back.
Yes.
But I still have probably 15 classic amps with me in this room as we speak. High Watts and Voxes and Marshalls. Looking around, MI Audio stuff, we spoke about him before. Tons of Fenders. There's 4 Fenders in here. Rev amps. And I love them all as objects of art and as sonic reminders of my journey. They're amazing, and I still use them, especially if a client insists on having an amp mic'd. The Magnetone's probably the best. The Twilight of Stereo. Ooh, I love that.
What was it? How about the learning curve on something like that? I think that's one of the things that.
Well, the learning curve is quite. It can be very great, especially with fractal gear, which is deep, like deeper than anything else. But so you have to embrace. You have to be a fan of technology, I guess, because otherwise the learning curve can be a little. What's the word I'm looking for? Frustrating, and that can put people off. Daunting, yes, and it can be daunting, and it's still daunting because Cliff Chase, who runs and owns Fractal Audio and does all of the code work for it, and owns most of the amps, 200 odd that are modelled in the firmware, including Dumbles and all of the old Fenders and Marshalls and God knows what else. They're all there, perfectly models. He likes to include all of the parameters and some that you would never have access to in the real world on real amps in the software and firmware and editing facilities that come with the Fractal stuff. So if you want to get really, really deep, including slew rates and bias rates and variac controls and all that sort of stuff, you can do it. But if you just want to dial up an amp, say a Plexi, a 1959 Super Lead Plexi, and put a greenback greenback cabinet underneath it, you can do that too. So it can be one or the other, but to look at it can be daunting and even a little bit scary, which I think is why Line 6 and Headrush, they found a market for the same sort of thing, but it is a much easier navigational journey.
Yeah. Well, and just like the HX Stomp is a perfect example of, the other stuff is a little too scary now, but this is a great way into something like that.
Yeah. So they've cornered that market, and congratulations to them, because they've done and will probably continue to do very well. But eventually, some people like to graduate to a higher being product, shall we say? And to my knowledge, at the moment, the Fractal is the highest, and so it is an absolute honour to be able to work with those guys, because I do now, to write and to help out the fractal audio community, which is large and growing, and to be included in it is one of the absolute highlights of my musical journey, I have to say.
Is there anything that you do to not like weird superstitious way, but do you have any sort of routine that you go through before you're preparing for a show?
A glass and a half of red wine.
I'm going to ask a serious question about that. Is that for a specific reason other than you like the taste of wine?
No, it's to loosen me up a little bit, because I can be a nervous contender, especially if I'm playing with a different act or a new act or something like that. And it's just it's an unfortunate habit that I've gotten into since I began playing in my 20s, when it wouldn't be a glass and a half. It was probably 10 times as much. And quite detrimental, and has been to my career. So I've managed to curb all of that sort of thing to just, something a bit more moderate.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't even have that. Sometimes just a glass of water. I don't like having to meet a lot of people or different people or relations or those sorts of things before a stage show, because you tend to focus on them and try to appease them and accommodate them backstage, and they're all kind of like, wow, this is what backstage is like, and there's catering and all sorts of stuff, and you end up getting your mojo sucked out badly before you hit the stage.
Yeah.
Because you have to be friendly and accommodate people. So afterwards, not so bad. Beforehand, yeah, not a big fan of that, and I would imagine that other performers, perhaps even yourselves, may share that.
Well, I worried about that. Tony and I, Tony's friends with Joe Bonamassa, and we went and saw him before the last show, and I was kind of shocked that we were going to see him before the show. And,
some people are not fussed by it, so
yeah,
Joe's one.
Probably not a whole lot of stuff throw him off his game, but
no.
But I was conscious of it. I'm like, I don't know if we should be here.
Well. I'm sure he would, make it obvious if he didn't want you there, or one of his.
This is true.
One of his people would say, "Okay, guys, time to go."
Yes. Yes.
That's often what happens. But if he's familiar with you, or if I'm familiar with them, like if they're childhood friends or somebody who I've grown up with, and it's just and they're cool, and you don't have to put on airs and graces, and they don't either. So there's no kind of effort involved. If that makes sense. Right. Because that's when you suddenly, like, all of your energy becomes drained before you get on stage, and when you do get on stage, you think, "Oh man, thank God I'm away from it," and then suddenly you have to focus again and revitalize yourself. So that's probably a selfish point of view, but it's something that I have to consider, and most of the other guys in the band and of other bands that we tour with feel the same way. Afterwards is fine.
Yeah,
okay.
That makes perfect sense, because I think, as you say, you channel your energy and your focus on the performance, and then if there's a disruption, and then afterwards you're relaxed. You've done done the job, and you can unwind a little bit. So that makes perfect sense.
Brett, I have 3 quick questions for you, and then we'll start to wrap this up. Okay, and do our would you rather dandy at the end. We have a question that came in. Well, actually, let me ask this first. We've been talking about being a professional musician, or really a long-time musician. As a long-time musician, have you had to deal with any, any physical issues like hands? I know your back is probably suffered a bit, but has any of that impaired your playing, or have you had to adjust, and how have you done that?
I haven't had any physical issues except for the spinal issues that put me in hospital in 2009, and it took 6 months of recovery because I couldn't walk. So that stopped me dead in my tracks from touring. Aside from that, I've been pretty fortunate. I played ice hockey when I was a kid, and I was a skateboarder and still am a skateboarder. So I suffered the injuries that often go along with those idiotic sports. I've been attracted to speed and just being an idiot, really, forever. I'm not afraid. I've never been afraid. But no, I've been very lucky with my hands. I did once. I'm the cook here at home. I like to cook. I grew up with chefs, so I do all of the cooking. And with cooking, sometimes comes the terrible chopping the carrot knife accident. So a couple of hours before a large show in Melbourne, I did actually take the end of my index finger off with a Japanese chopping knife, and that stopped me for probably a month while they put on some fake skin and let it heal again. There was so much blood. But I was less concerned about the injury than I was about the inconvenience, because it was a duet show, and I was one half of the duet.
Oh boy,
with James actually, and so I had to ring my brother, who's also a well-known musician in Australia. His name is Scott Kingman. He's played with the Vinyls and currently tours with a band called Screaming Jets, and he's been around a lot. But he's 6 or 7 years younger than me. I say, I know you don't even hardly know these songs, but you're just going to have to go up there and cover for me and just make it up. Wow. And he did. Yes, I think that's the only other injury that I've had apart from the back situation.
All right, everybody knock on wood for Brett.
That stopped me. So just watch it when you're chopping those, cucumbers and carrots and things like that. Keep your fingers out of the way.
Tuck the fingers under.
Tuck them
under.
Okay. One more of two. What is your special guitar? This is from Jay Pluff.
Well, my special guitar on stage is probably...
Doesn't have to be on stage.
Oh gosh, I've got 60 guitars here, and there are 30 at my beckoning call just next to me now.
House is on fire. You grabbing one. Which one are you grabbing?
I usually go for a Charvel, to be honest. I love Charvels. I've played them since Grover was building them back in the early 80s with Wayne, and I just like the big wide necks on them. And as far as the pickup configuration goes, they can be either anything from SSS through to HSS or humbuckers. So the first guitar that I'm grabbing here now, which I like to play a lot, is a Charvel US Select San Dimas with a JB in the back, the classic old JB,
Yep.
and a couple of Seymour Duncan Strat pickups in it, and a Floyd that actually works. So I'm going to say the special guitars are Charvels, but in the past they've been Ernie Balls as well, the Ernie Ball Axis.
So you don't have like the one?
The guitar that I don't want to... It's probably a Custom Shop SG, which has been in the shower recess with 30 other guitars for the best part of 2 years, and I'm too lazy to dig it out.
Okay.
But I don't own many Gibsons. I think I've got 3 or 4, and the others are Explorers. I love Explorers.
Oh, yeah. I love an Explorer.
Yeah, a bit like the V, An Explorer is what you really wanted when you bought a Les Paul. It just sounds... It's huge. Okay. Yeah, it's a 1961 reissue Custom Shop from 2010. The old Les Paul / SG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
beautiful,
perfect.
Fun.
Jared
fun
would agree with
you. Yeah, yeah. Okay, last one. If you could have one drive pedal to cover the majority, this is from Mike D. One drive pedal to cover the majority of your guitar playing needs.
It's got to be an 808 or a derivative. It has to be, because I use them as not so much as drive pedals, but as boosters for the front ends.
Yeah, this was going into a clean amp.
Into a clean amp. Well, into a clean amp, it's got to be the Crunchbox.
Okay.
Yep. And I can just I can dial it up pretty much with everything at noon and just ride the guitar's volume, which I do a lot. That's an old school thing, to ride the volume. That's why I like Stratocasters a lot, because the pinky sits on the volume knob all night, just to give me the different dynamics.
Well said. All right, Brett, has been We could go for hours, I know, but I really appreciate you taking your time to.
I appreciate you having me on. I'm flattered and honored, and it's been good fun. Thank you.
Awesome. We have a few things to do before we let you go. Number one, which is we're all going to hop in the back of an El Camino. I don't know if you're familiar with those, if they have those down there, but they are special cars. It's not a car. It's not a truck.
Half pickup truck.
It's an El Camino.
It's a way of life.
Yeah, we're going to drive by Jared's house, although he's not there because he's on his way up here.
Where did Jared go?
So we'll keep going. We're down to Would You Ratherville.
This is the Would You Rather.
Oh, okay. So that's south of where's Jared live?
He's in Nashville now.
Yeah, he's the pickup meister at Gibson right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hi, Jared.
You missed out, Jared. So, folks, at this point of the show, we like to do a little segment called Would You Rather?
Yeah.
How do you like that?
You don't ever try. You just kind of not try.
I'd try
Which
not
I
to
can
try.
understand because he does it so well.
Yeah, I mean,
Jared usually
why
does
try?
it. All right, say the thing.
So, this week's Would You Rather comes from my brain.
Beautiful. Brett, what you don't know is, like, honestly, Tony is kind of like Rain Man about guitars and music gear history. Like, it's crazy.
I'm an excellent driver.
It's pretty remarkable.
We could talk for ages.
You could.
Oh, absolutely, and we should.
Go ahead.
So this is one of my favorite kind of Would You Rathers.
Okay.
Because it involves my time machine.
Okay, perfect.
Now, I've been having some issues with the time machine. I can only go to 2 years. It's, I know it's bad.
Okay.
So my 2 years, it's stuck on 1976 and 1966.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the Would You Rather involves, and this one goes out to all of our bass player listeners, because as guitarists, we sometimes...
This is a bass question?
It's a bass question.
Okay.
So here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. So the setting for 1976 goes back towards the end of the year when Glenn Matlock got kicked out of the Sex Pistols for allegedly liking the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
And so option one is you go back to 76, you try out and become the bass player for the Sex Pistols. Mm-hmm. Or the setting is 1966, also towards the end of the year. And this is the infamous Paul is dead rumor that Paul was killed in a car accident in November of 1966. And he was very upset after getting into a fight with John Lennon over John made fun of Maxwell's silver hammer. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of ties in the Pistols and the Beatles. Yep. And so your option there, number two, is you have to take Paul's place in 1966.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that you went that way with it. I thought you were going to say who replaced Paul Simonon, because Pistols and Clash both ended up replacing their bass players.
That's true, but this one doesn't involve that.
Yes.
This is 1976 and
I know.
1966.
I got the Beatles thing after that. I was like, wait, where are you going with that?
Because Glenn Matlock allegedly
Yes.
got kicked out because he liked the Beatles. But actually, he liked the Faces better than the Beatles. So.
Right. Well, he liked different kind of music. That's really what... Okay, anyways. All right.
So two choices. You go back, setting one, 1976. You become the bass player for the Sex Pistols.
Right.
Or option two, you go back to 1966 and you become the bass player for the Beatles.
Jeez.
Okay. So the question is, which one would I rather?
Yeah, would you rather?
Okay. Well, the Pistols. Definitely. History tells us that Glenn is still with us. So he lived on, even despite their fractured relationship for a couple of years there.
Yep.
And the Pistols rock. That Bollocks album, I listened to it again last night. It's just, as you say, it's a killer. And so are some of the tracks that were satellite tracks to it, like Satellite and Did You Know Wrong, and other things like that. The Pistols were very big part of my formative years in terms of my attitude to rock guitar. Steve Jones is an absolute legend, and to see him live do it is something else. So I'm picking the Pistols, thanks. With all due respect to the Beatles and their incredibly an untouchable legacy, I'm taking the Pistols. The other big band that I saw, and I know this is going off
please,
a bit sideways, in '76 was the Alice Cooper Band.
Yes.
On their Welcome to My Nightmare tour with the Dick Wagner and Steve Hunter, who had just come out from Lou Reed's band, Rock and Roll Animal, I think.
Yep.
And that was just frightening for a 13-year-old kid. It was the theatre kind of aspect, and the actual, and the songs, which were extraordinarily strong and rocking. That was a big thing too. So yeah, I guess really all of my major roots come from pretty heavy guitars. And I met Steve Hunter at that NAMM show many years later, and I was sitting there playing the intro, just doodling away playing the intro to Sweet Jane, which he wrote. and his friend Brad brought him up to me, and he laughed because I knew Brad, and he said, "This is Steve Hunter," and I just felt like the biggest dick.
Did he tell you owed him $50?
But Steve had a laugh, and we sat there and chatted for ages, hours. So that was good.
That's so
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I will say one thing that I appreciate about what you do is you're not afraid of the distortion and overdrive, which a lot of people who do demos are like, try to get the purest sound. And it's like, you hit one note and it's like, oh, listen to the reverb. It's like, no, you go for it. I love that.
Yep.
Okay, Tony, go.
I think I am going to go on the Sex Pistol train as well because, one, I don't think I could ever play bass as good as Paul McCartney did or sing and play like Paul McCartney did and does, even if he was killed in 1966 and replaced by
It's absolute nonsense.
What album were we talking about at 66? Rubber Soul? Was it?
66.
Revolver.
It would have been Revolver going into the Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Or at least that's where they were assembling stuff for Sgt. Pepper's. So, and I love the Pistols too. I mean, and Steve Jones actually or allegedly recorded most of the bass lines on Nevermind the Bollocks, but so the stuff that he played is actually quite good. I mean,
it's great.
And Glenn Matlock played some really killer stuff. I'd heard some earlier versions of many of the songs that were on that Glenn played on. And he was technically a better bass player. Sid, unfortunately, could not play bass very well. And that's,
At all, maybe even.
Okay, at all.
Good.
Even. So, yes.
I'm doing the same thing, mostly because I think we could have squeezed out a few more albums. So I would like to see what would have come with somebody who wasn't a complete mess.
We had Rock and Roll Swindle, which was pretty much a complete mess. It had a couple of interesting moments on it, and then all of the the unreleased stuff. But then, of course, John went to Pill, and Steve and Paul went to Brazil, and met up with Ronnie Biggs. And then Steve had his own band, didn't he? It
was really short,
and eventually ended up in radio in LA.
Yeah, right? Jonesy's Jukebox.
Is he still there?
He's still doing it. Yeah, I remember I was living in LA when he came to that, and I was like, "This is wild," because he was like no other DJ I'd ever heard. Like he didn't. He closed his door and locked it, and he said, "I'm doing what I'm doing. You guys can all piss off."
The secret to success. That's what I do too.
Yeah. Now, really quickly, you mentioned something. Now we're just rambling a little bit, but it's fun. One of the things that I heard on his show that I have tried to track down for every couple of years. I'm like, I'm going to see if I can find this. And it was one of. It was like it happened, and I was like, "Wait, what was that?" And it was Roxy Music doing a cover of "Ocean" from Lou Reed.
Velvet Underground.
Thank you. I was trying to think for Velvet Underground. Thank you. In French.
Oh, God.
It was incredible.
Wow.
It was
Okay.
incredible, or at least it was laced with French.
I'm unfamiliar with the original and the cover, I'm afraid, so I can't contribute to that train of thought. But I'll hunt it down now.
It's, I mean, I've looked for years and years. Anyways, but that was just a weird thing, and he played that, and I was like, he's playing this. I mean, he was. Yeah, anyways, fantastic show.
Nice,
but nevertheless, I digress. Thank you so much for doing that. Would you rather? If you would like to hear your would you rather, please send them to us. We love getting them, and we'll do that, and it'll be fun. Okay. Tony, you got a couple people to thank real quick, and then we're going to let our friend Brett go.
Yes, or will we?
I think he's probably looking for the exit right now. Go ahead.
Well, no. It's been a lot of fun. Actually, the funny thing is, it's 11:20 in the morning here, and I'm on what people call the 16-8 diet at the moment to try and lose a bit of my middle-aged paunch, which means breakfast is not until 11 o'clock, and at exactly 11 o'clock, I am friggin' starving, man.
Gotcha.
We won't keep you any longer.
No. It's good. It's good discipline.
At this point of the show, Todd, there's a group of people that we love to thank.
Indeed.
These are our executive producers. Now, as an executive producer, well, how do you become one? Is that what you're asking me, Todd?
I was.
Okay, you go over to patreon.com/the Guitar Knobs. Check out a couple different levels in which you can become a patron, a sponsor of this very podcast. And there's some very nice thank you gifts that come your way. But one thing more. Jared, what is that?
You get to have your name right on the thing.
I didn't even think Jared was here, but he did. He was there.
I'm not.
It's like he was there.
I'm eating chicken in my car.
Raw chicken. So, without further ado, special thanks to these executive producers: Moon Guitars, Vader and Pedals, Drew Lopez, John Helverson, Rick Calhoun, Trevor Gunberg, Elad Mizrahi, Mike D, Richard Kendall, Mark Garton, Matt Hart, James White, Justin Jones, Anthony Gemolero, Bill Gola Guitars from Down Under, John Esterly from Rare Buzz Effects, Anthony Lathrop, Stefan Lamb, Michael Senchuk, Ken Sayers, Doug Christ, Darren Gregory, John Anglin, Tom Brezen, Rusty Sneeden, Ralph Gottschalk from Wonderful Audio Technology. What? David Poe, Don Kloss, Gregory Randall, Brett Hogarth, and Eric Hema.
Yay.
No, Todd, don't interrupt, because there's another special group of executive producers. We call them our Grand Poobahs. In addition to all the great stuff, they have a fez that they must wear upon their head whilst listening to the podcast. So special thanks to these Grand Poobahs: Tommy Manasco, Ricardo Igareda, David Kaminga, Brandon Wyon Pickups, Hex Matos, Michio Murakishi, Bob Crouch, Jack Cadian, Sam Jett, Tyler Rhines, LSJ Music Company, John Williams, James Pennington, Adam Johnson, Steve Keys, Cody Foster, Science of Sound, Brian Robison, Jonathan Jerusik from 12th Hour Devices, Corey Nigro, Michael Van Zant, Tim Nowak, Jonathan Daly, Martin Cliff, Sean S. and Eddie Serratos. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, one and all. And humongous thanks to our friend Brett Kingman for joining us tomorrow. Because it's actually tomorrow.
It's actually tomorrow.
Yes. From the future, Brett Kingman. Everyone.
Things are going to be great, kids. They're going to be great.
Free beer tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you so much for having me. And Todd, this probably doesn't need to be said, but send me the links and I'll stick them up everywhere.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, absolutely will do. Tony, where can people find you real quick?
Just go over to pickguardian.com. Check out some of the stuff that I do. I make custom pick guards. Let me know what you need, what you like, what you're trying to do, and I might be able to help you out. In fact, I'm sure I can help you out.
I believe that. And then, Brett, where can people find your stuff real quick?
BrettKingman.com. I think it's probably a good place to start. And Brett Kingman on YouTube. That's the name of the channel. That's another good place to start. And Brett Kingman on Instagram.
All right. And check you out live, and you're touring with your special digital rig and everything.
We're off till October now, which is godsend, really. So plenty of work. There'll be plenty coming from this little room.
Good. You can send me an email, Todd at theguitarknobs.com. You can also DM me on Instagram at Guitar Knobs. And hey, we've been talking about music and awesome rock and roll. Go check out my band, the Valentinos, valentinos.com, and download it from where all the streaming stuff is.
That's great music too, by the way. I had a good listen to that.
Oh, thank you. Wow, that means a lot.
That's rocking. Yeah,
Thank you.
I love it.
Wow, I'm over here. I'm beaming. I'm blushing. That makes me feel awesome. Thanks, man. Okay, everybody. Hey, have a fantastic guitar weekend. Subscribe.
Oh yeah.
See ya.
Tony. While I'm doing all this work, you figure that out.
I will figure this out. I'm working it out.
This is usually when Jared, who normally would be here, but he's traveling from Tennessee right now to come up our way, usually says all the bad words all at once so he can have a chuckle. And
no, I like to go in cold and see what happens.
You know when you're watching the guys deep sea fishing and they got like 10 poles out the back? Just trying to get something.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
He's Polish.
There's a guy with 10 poles out of his back.
I can talk forever. You'll probably tell me to shut up.
No, but I won't.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.